All right, okay. All right, okay. All right, we got 87 bottles of water here. Anybody need one?
Yes, please.
Do you need? You got one?
And we dressed to match. How cute are we?
Oh, yes. Everybody got the memo on the pink. Even Earl. All right. Hi, everybody. Okay, well, welcome back. We are at the Sync Up Conference, the 8th annual Sync Up Conference here at the George and Joyce Wein Jazz and Heritage Center in the Treme neighborhood of New Orleans, Louisiana. And this is, as I said, the 8th year of this conference, and this is the final panel of Sync Up 2015. So thank you all for being here.
Closing the event.
You are closing. You're headlining, bro. You are headlining the show. All right. Does this mean you're headlining Jazz Fest, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to put that in my bio.
Okay, fantastic. So this is a panel on crowdfunding, one that I've been looking forward to for a long time and looking forward to learning some stuff, because this is an area that I really need more help to understand. And so we have on this panel some folks that have experience doing crowdfunding on different platforms. And so Alexandra Scott is a musician here in New Orleans, a singer who has done a successful crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. Hi, Alexandra.
Hi, Scott.
Earl Ciano is a musician, producer, composer, band leader, who has also had success using Kickstarter as a crowdfunding campaign, platform, rather. Welcome, Earl. Thanks. Blake Berticelli is a filmmaker, not a musician, who has had also significant success using Kickstarter as a crowdfunding platform. So Blake, welcome.
Hello.
And Kimball Packard, who is not a musician, but is a manager of artists, including Glenn David Andrews, who has also had success doing crowdfunding, and the platform that you used was Pledge Music. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, great. So I thought a fun way to begin this panel would be to start with a video that Alexandra has on...
Oops, I kind of blew that. Can we start again? Hi, I'm Alexandra.
Nice.
And this is my Indiegogo fundraiser.
If I lived beneath a palm tree,
I'm asking for money to make what will be my 6th record.
if the light were always blue, then I'd be happy all the time, and I'd sing about the color of the
Back in October, I had money set aside to start recording, and then something happened. I had a dog, Jack. We'd been together since April 2002, when I rescued him from the New Orleans SPCA, and he rescued me with his endless joy. On October 5th, he collapsed. He needed a very expensive surgery to save his life. After the surgery, I found out that he had 2 kinds of untreatable cancer. All the money I had saved for the record went towards saving Jack's life and making his last days comfortable, and I'm prouder of that than I am of any song I've ever written. If he'd needed one of my fingers and all the hair off of my head, I'd be 9-fingered and bald right now. He died in my arms on November 24th, and I miss him. So now I need some help from you to record these songs. I have 27 songs written, and I want to record as many as I can. I probably won't make an actual CD. I think the days of the CD are over. I don't really want to make any more plastic. Plus, the internet offers all kinds of cool options these days, such as letting you pick the sequence you want your CD to be in, then burn it. Or offering a couple of artwork options, then letting you download it. Or creating opportunities for you to upload your own artwork. I know a lot of great artists, but the world and the internet is full of artists I haven't met yet. This is going to be a different kind of album, interactive. We will make it together. I want to release tracks as I make them.
won't you do it again?
The world has changed. changed. My world has changed. Sometimes that's really hard. Sometimes that's really awesome. But I don't see
I'm going
what
to
we
stop
can
the video there if
possibly
that's
do
okay.
except roll with it.
But that is really well done video.
Thank you. We worked really hard on it.
That's great. So let's just jump right in. Why Indiegogo? And as opposed to Kickstarter or Pledge Music or Artist Share or any of the other platforms?
I picked Indiegogo because I wasn't at all certain that I was going to make my fundraising goal, which, in fact, I turned out to be wrong about. We exceeded it by about $1,500. Thank you, lovely people. That's not wood. I don't know why I'm knocking wood anyway for something that's already done. But, prior to my doing the Indiegogo had allowed 2-month fundraising campaigns, and I thought that would give me a longer time to basically bother people for money.
Other platforms didn't allow as much time
Kickstarter, I believe, is a month.
You can do it.
You can extend it? So they've maybe changed that since I was setting this up. But anyway, it ended up being that I had to do it for a month. But I think it's a little bit your nature. When my friend Vanessa Neiman did her Kickstarter, she picked Kickstarter specifically because she only wanted the amount of money they were asking for, and if they got less than that, she didn't feel it would be useful. Like, she wasn't willing to put it in a savings account and
So
wait.
one of the issues for you was that with Kickstarter, if you don't make your goal, you get nothing. But with Indiegogo, if you ask for $7,500 but you only raise $6,500, you still get the money, or you get a percentage of the money? How does it work?
They take a larger percentage of the money if you don't make your goal, so you have incentive to make your goal, but
It's a difference of about 5%, I think.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it's like 9% versus 4%.
So either way, they're going to take a commission on
Yeah.
what you raise, but
Right.
if you make less than your stated goal, they'll take a bigger commission.
That's right.
Earl?
So depending on what your workflow is, either one can make sense. With like the reason that Kickstarter is set up the way that it is if you need a certain amount of money to be able to produce whatever the product is, say it's a CD. If you have backers that are promised a CD that you need 10 grand to make and you only get 7, then like you're gonna have to come out of pocket just to be able to fulfill your backer rewards. So the all or nothing aspect of Kickstarter is actually, it's there by design as a feature so that you don't end up in a situation where you owe your backers something that you're unable to produce.
Yeah, and I think Kickstarter is a brilliant platform. I've contributed to quite a few Kickstarters. I follow it. It's one of the few newsletters that I haven't actually actively unsubscribed from. I just was betting against myself. I wanted to make sure that, I don't understand how bets work, so maybe I'm not.
We did a bit of market research going into our campaign, which was for a big film. And
I'll put the website up right here.
Lou's not here. And I was the campaign manager for this film. Daniele and Terry I've worked with before, so they kind of brought me on board since I knew a lot of web stuff. But we've compared Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and just raising money ourselves. And what we found was in Kickstarter, there was a built-in fan base that was really, 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 really strong. And
You mean Kickstarter fans?
Kickstarter fans.
People who just cruise Kickstarter.
Organic Kickstarter fans.
People with way too much time on their hands.
And money.
No, people with really good hearts who want to help artists. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
going to
yeah,
allow
yeah.
you to.
Okay.
Well, we had there was a lot of fans who we knew that we could get through Terry Gilliam. We knew we can get through Daniele because he's worked with Wes Craven and these kind of guys, but we still had a pocket of about, $20,000 that we didn't know how we would raise. And we talked to a few people at Kickstarter, and they said, we really have a great audience, and just because you have a wonderful project, we really like your video, we can help you promote it to our audience. And sure enough, we were really, really surprised, because Kickstarter tells you, it kind of breaks down how many backers came through Kickstarter and how many backers came through just your own promotion. And we were so surprised by how many backers came through Kickstarter. It made total sense for us at the end that we went with Kickstarter because we had a significant amount of backers who weren't even related to Terry Gilliam, weren't attracted by that. And we had a lot of emails, a lot of messages saying, whoa, we found this through like Kickstarter's staff picks. And we just really want to support it. So that was an amazing thing that we found through Kickstarter, and I think a reason for Kickstarter, if you can deal with their all or nothing goal.
Yeah, the success rate, if they feature you, is really high with Kickstarter. It's like over 90%. So you really need to come up with something really unique and creative and try to get them to, because the average fund campaign like this, there's only about a 35% success rate of if you've set a goal or something. But with Kickstarter, getting them to feature you makes a huge difference.
So can you explain, so we're looking at that, Blake, a slide that you provided. So I'm not too familiar with pledged via Kickstarter, via external referrers. What are external referrers? Is that like if I put the link on my web page and people come to it that way, or what do you mean?
So a lot of the external referrers are basically people who come directly to your Kickstarter page and pledge. So they're not linking, they're not searching through the Kickstarter bar for your pledge, they're coming directly, you're linking to it. So a lot of those people are news articles that we had linked to our pledge, Facebook posts, different things like that. By the way, Facebook was the other big asset in this game. But the pledged via Kickstarter are people who discovered it through Kickstarter. Some of them might have been told to search, hallucinate through Kickstarter, but a lot of them, because we did get a lot of emails to confirm this, came because Kickstarter featured us on their Twitter feed, on their homepage, and we saw those numbers jump when Kickstarter featured us.
Do they do that with projects that don't feature Terry Gilliam?
They do. Terry Gilliam was a big in the door, but we really had to sell them with our project, with our video, with a lot of different pieces. And I just finished working on another crowdfunding project for Water Literacy Campus in New Orleans, and that didn't have any big names. It was just water literacy in New Orleans, which is kind of an intellectual concept that Kickstarter really loved, and a lot of our pledges came through Kickstarter.
Earl?
Yeah, I had a very similar experience to that because my Brass Punk got picked up and featured by Kickstarter, and I think about somewhere in the range of 60% of all my backers came from Kickstarter traffic. But as I understand it, the process of them selecting those is actually like the staff votes on these things every so often. So it's kind of like this collective, like they see the different projects coming through, and like people kind of tag the ones that they think are interesting, and then they collectively kind of choose which ones make it in the feature. So it's like I don't know. I mean, clearly you've got to have something that speaks to them on that, but I don't know that there's any way to like know that they're going to pick up on it, whether you have a big name or not. It's more about like what the project is, and if they find it interesting.
I thought it was because you have a friendship with Perry Chen.
Actually, he made it a point to reach out to me when that happened, and so I had nothing to do with this. These guys just did this on their own. So at least
Myth
according to
busting
him,
right here at Sync Up.
Yeah.
Exciting day.
A big thing too that Kickstarter taught us, because I had a connection at Kickstarter that I just made through emailing Kickstarter and saying, hey guys, I have this project, can you help me out? Can you look at it before we put it up? And they will review your project before you post it. If you ask them, they totally will. Yeah. So that's something that you definitely have to do. But so one of the contacts there told me about the staff pick badge that people think is the big exciting thing to have on your Kickstarter. Kickstarter actually hates that staff pick badge because it's not created by them. It's what projects have kind of put on their websites or on their videos. So for them, the staff pick is a little bit more nuanced, where they'll put you in different areas, and they'll kind of tweet about you. So that green badge is not really the thing to look for. It's that little email that you get saying, hey, we really like your project. We've decided to make you a staff pick.
So let's see. So that means, like, if we go to the Kickstarter homepage, and these are, what is this? All right, so
there it is. There's one if you go right down.
So this. All right, so staff picks.
See that? Yeah, that green badge right there where it says staff picked.
And that means what?
That means nothing. Anybody
that's
can,
helpful.
Yeah, anybody can put that up. It is helpful because somebody at Kickstarter told me that they actually don't like the design of that. They think that they're eventually going to develop something that signifies staff pick in a little bit more prominent way, but they don't like to clutter up their beautiful design of Kickstarter's interface with these staff pick badges, and a lot of people are putting them on without being actually selected as staff picks.
Well, so how do you end up on the on Kickstarter's homepage?
It's in their magic sauce. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Well, I mean, and this might be a diversion, so you can undivert me if you want. But I think we all, have specialized knowledge about different crowdfunding platforms. But really, what I found, having succeeded beyond my expectations and not having much of a name or any support other than what I found through people just really liking it, was I think you just have to really create a good campaign, and then you have to do something that, at least for me, was super, super uncomfortable. And like every single day I would make a list of people who I was going to email and say, would you mind sharing this on your Facebook page? Would you mind tweeting about this? And I didn't send like group emails. Sometimes I copied and pasted, but it was individual emails, because I think we're all so inundated with like way too many mailings. And I think
So-
no matter what platform you use, the important thing is to find a way to make it special
gotta work
and
it.
connect
You really
with
got to
people.
work it. You've got to be there every day, creating interest and posting updates, and it's really you have to think about that. Make sure you have the bandwidth to do it, and because then when it's done, then there's a lot of time involved, as Stanton mentioned last week, I think, about just fulfilling everything, just getting it out, and not only just the time it takes to fulfill it, but the cost of goods. You may have raised $20,000, but depending on what your premiums are, you've got to factor that in. You don't have $20,000 to make your record. You have
So to make sure everybody understands, when you create a campaign,
Yeah.
you have to come up with things that you're going to give to those people who are pledging money to you,
Yeah.
and there are different levels. So for
Right.
$10, you may get a copy of the record. For $20, you may get a copy of the record and a T-shirt. For $200, they may get a name check in the liner notes. For $2,000, they get dinner with Alexandra at Galatoire's.
We had
Cheaper than that.
we had a $750 one. You got to play with Glenn David's band at DBA one night, and somebody from Brazil took us up on that one, actually.
How did that go?
Well, it went really well. The guy was a very talented guitarist, as it turned out. So instead of just doing one song, he got to sit in for most of the set.
All right. So why did you choose Pledge Music for Glenn's campaign?
In our case, Glenn David wanted to earmark a percentage to a charity that he felt very strongly about, a place called Right Turn in the Boston area, which is a place set up by musicians for musicians for recovery, and a lot of them aren't set up to handle that, but they can do it.
So Pledge Music was able to divert a portion of the proceeds to your
because of
preferred
tax
charity.
issues and everything, so they're set up so that we had 5% went to Right Turn.
Now, Pledge Music, we've had Benji Rogers,
Yeah.
the founder of Pledge Music, as a panelist at Sync Up. I think it was 2 years ago. And when we were preparing for this panel, I emailed him and I said, hey, can you send me the name of any successful people who have used Pledge Music, people in New Orleans who have had successful crowdfunding campaigns on Pledge Music? And he wrote me back saying, I'm sorry, Pledge Music is not actually a crowdfunding source.
Interesting.
It's a fan engagement, fan building platform, and they really downplay the whole crowdfunding aspect of what they do, and yet it looks very much like a
very much
crowdfunding
so.
source
But
to me.
there is a great back end to it where they encourage you to post regular updates, especially video updates or things, so people can see how a project is going on. And some people have used it where they've actually been posting demos of the songs that are going to be on the record and everything. Or there is a lot of fan engagement there, but it is still a crowdfunding platform, no matter what you say.
All right. I have lots of questions, but I think our audience also has lots of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to questions. So if anybody has anything that they would like to ask that's specific, please come and use the microphone.
Did any of your projects go over budget from what you raised?
That's a great question.
I was actually just reading something that Amanda Palmer had written about how common this is, how often, the cost of making rewards, fulfilling rewards, shipping them is just way more than what you expect. And I'm sure these guys can probably speak about it more articulately than I can because I played a lot of gigs last night and I'm stupider than I intended to be. But I think it's pretty normal, unfortunately.
So the question was about your actual budget going over the amount that you stated in your campaign. So you say you want to raise $7,500, you actually end up spending 10 grand or 12 grand or 15 grand, and all of a sudden you're in the hole when you thought that this was going to be the main revenue stream. Earl?
Yeah, it can definitely happen. It happened to me with Brass Punk. I grossly underestimated the cost of shipping vinyl records internationally, and also, I guess, underestimated the amount of people out of the country that were going to want this record. And fortunately, my project actually raised double the goal, so I had the cushion there to take care of it. But I remember thinking, it's like, man, I'm so glad that I ran over, because if not, I'd really be in a bad position.
We're in the phase right now of sending rewards out, and the shipping cost internationally is kind of what's starting to hit us very hard. Something that I've discovered very recently, and I'm very happy that I have, because I didn't discover when we were setting the shipping costs on our Kickstarter, is that you can negotiate shipping costs with FedEx. And if you have over 100 parcels, so even like the little teeny guys, you can get like 68% discounts on your shipping costs. And it's something that I never ever thought about. Like I opened a FedEx business account, and I was talking to a FedEx guy. He's like, "Yeah, why didn't you guys call us before you start your Kickstarter?" So that's a big tip that we learned. But then the actual production, we raise more than we initially set. Our goal was $50,000. We raised about $70,000, and that made the director's eyes get a little bit brighter. And one of the things that we've had to deal with is kind of reining in on that extra money that we've raised and using that as the cushion and keeping that as the cushion and not expanding the film greater. And it's something we're still actively working on now that we're in production.
So one of the strategies that everybody would tell us when we were raising money, and it made sense after the fact because you get that last minute waiting to see if it's going to happen, is they would say have a lot of money. Say you want to raise $8 grand, start with $4 grand, so that if you get there and it's worth it to you to have some investment, that you can have your own personal money. Is that cheating the system? Is that something that any of you may have considered?
You mean like putting your $4,000 in to reach the goal?
Or have your uncle in St. Louis, donate, be there on that last day. It's like an eBay auction. You have some money in reserve. You have friends and family who are waiting to invest in the project, and they've already invested some, but they don't want to see you lose out on your Kickstarter. So you may have had a strategy of having, a third of the money that you want to raise, kind of like the opposite of going over, knowing that you're not going to lose out what you raised because you were prepared in advance. Is that cheating the intention of Kickstarter? Is it a clever way of making your project happen?
So I'm sorry, you got to explain that one more time.
Okay.
So,
So
you're saying that if you're falling short of your goal,
Right.
have some money in your own back pocket to get it over
Yeah,
the goal, so you don't lose out.
Say my project is 16 grand,
Okay.
and I know that if I raise 8 grand, if I had 8 grand when I started, that I can fund my project. So I'm not going to lose out on money that was raised, and I'm still on the hook to
It would
finish
apply
the
in an
product.
all or nothing campaign, I guess.
I think that I've seen people do this. I don't think it's necessarily terrible. I also think that it probably makes more sense if you already got 8 grand and you need 16 to do the project, then just set your goal for the other 8. Because I think that there's what you miss there, and it might be a subtle thing, but I think that there's kind of an added momentum that can happen once you cross the threshold for the goal, and you can start offering stretch goals beyond it. Once the project's in success mode, that can kind of roll. And setting your goal at 16 grand, and when you're going to drop in 8 at the last minute, might preclude getting that little pop.
And
Also, sorry, you can unless you're going to carefully parcel out your 8 and donate it in like small amounts, people tend to know like, oh, the artist just donated to his or her own Kickstarter. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. My mom and a couple of different friends had given me cash donations, and in like the last 72 hours, we were like a little bit under goal, so I put a couple $100 in myself just to see, and then the next thing I knew, like 12 hours later, we were $1,000 over goal, and I was like, well, I didn't really need to do that, but maybe, on the other hand, maybe that was the thing that like lit it.
The other part that was a lot of people's advice was that, you know, if you had that reserve, you know, you'd keep your Kickstarter going. Say your Kickstarter was slow for a couple days, you might call up a cousin or a friend who had been waiting to donate, and then they'd hit your Kickstarter, so the numbers keep moving and it makes your project look active.
Momentum's really important. They say that there's a much greater success rate if the project reaches, they say 20% in a week. It makes a huge difference. The momentum and that you develop just seems to, for some reason, if some people go and look at your pledge, your campaign, and it's 3 weeks in and there's only 10 or 15%, they're apparently less likely to donate. And the other thing is not to make it too long, because there's a fatigue that comes at the other end. That they say 45 days is the ideal, because you get to 60 or 90 and you're getting fan fatigue as well.
Kickstarter highly discourages campaigns over 30 days.
Yeah.
They have the 60-day option, but they say do not do the 60-day option.
They've published data on this, and like typically projects over 30 days, unless they have a real reason for being longer than 30 days, they just don't do as well. So it seems like 30 days and under is the way to go.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Blueberry Productions. Could you tell me what's the tax consequences of crowdfunding for both the giver and the recipient?
So are donations tax deductible, number one, and do you have to report the revenue as income? Is that your question?
The first part of that, it depends on the platform. I know that Kickstarter, as far as I know, Kickstarter isn't for charities or whatever. I don't think that that's tax deductible. I think there are crowdfunding platforms that might be.
Well, with Kickstarter, you can, if you're a 501c3 nonprofit and you're doing a Kickstarter, you can, it's basically a tax deductible donation, then, but there's weird limits, like the Kickstarter, the amount of money that goes to Kickstarter is not part of the tax deductible, and you also have to factor in rewards like you would any donation. So if you're giving a reward worth $200 and you get a pledge of $400, only $200 of that reward is tax deductible. Yeah, and it varies per organization. So the best thing to do, and what Kickstarter says, is to contact them before you start making promises.
Yeah, I know Indiegogo offers a discount if you're a 501c3 on their fees, and in the case of Pledge Music, the only part that our pledgers were able to take as a tax deduction if they wanted to would have been 5% of the thing. And the income that comes in, it is income, but it ends up being used as expenses to make the record or something. So the tax liability,
So you have expenses to offset
Exactly.
the revenue.
Yeah,
So
sure.
as
that's
far
the
as your
whole
tax
point
filing, it's a wash.
Right. I'm paying for studio time and musicians and everything else. So those all become part of my.
So if you raised
expenses.
$20,000 on Kickstarter and then never spent the money making the record, then you have to report it as
I would guess you
$20,000
would,
worth of
yeah.
income. I guess you probably have to
And you'd
report
have
it
to
anyway.
explain a lot
but
to
you,
your
but you won't
pledgers.
have the offsetting expenses. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
Another question?
Hi, I'm Joe. I have a question about with the incentives. Like, let's say you're going to have, as a higher incentive, your band play a party or something of that nature. Now, in my case, I would want to pay the musicians that were in my band in order to get that done.
That's
So,
part of your cost of goods sold.
right.
is
So,
paying your musicians.
so would you just budget in what you would normally pay them and then add an additional amount to cover the incentive that you actually need to have funded?
You can, if your musicians are, if you're like a band where it's a collective, you could ask everybody if they'd be willing to do 1 or 2 shows where they're contributing to this because they're going to get to make a record or whatever it is you're funding. You can, I think it's nice, and Kickstarter is especially good at this, to be as transparent as possible about what costs are. So if it's going to be $2,500 for you and your band to come play a show, you could be like, this is the cost. I want to make sure you all know I'm paying my band because I love them and they're awesome. And I think that's the sort of stuff that makes people pay attention and stop and be like, oh, this is like a cool guy who's like, cares about his musicians. And I don't know, that's at least the kind of stuff that makes me stop and read as opposed to just like swipe.
Sure.
So if you want to pay your band $2,500 to play that premium reward party, then you need to add another $2,500 to your fundraising goal?
Probably.
Well, and this brings us to an interesting point about incentives and like what makes a good reward and what is, what kind of rewards might actually end up being difficult. And I really feel like the best rewards are the things that cost very little to produce or distribute, but at the same time give the backers some kind of a feeling of personal connection to whatever it is that you're doing. On my first Kickstarter project, I had a reward where I just made gumbo and had people over to the studio to check out the record while it was in progress. And this was one of the first projects on Kickstarter ever, and like I had no idea how this was going to go, but that thing sold out like almost instantly. It was like I forget, it might have been $50 or whatever. I was just kind of shocked, but like people want these things that like where they can actually engage and like be a part of that, whether it's that or a release party for a record you're making, or like some an opportunity to be behind the scenes, like maybe visit the studio while the record's going on. Those kinds of things, like there's real value in that for the fans. They really like that.
There's nothing like that personal experience.
Yeah, and it costs very little to do. So those kinds of things I think make the best rewards. If you can figure out like how do I give these people some way to like connect with this, so they there's that kind of very unique value proposition for them that in terms of money to create won't like cut out of our budget for whatever it is that we're actually what the bigger project is that we're trying to do.
And they say they say the $50 to $75 premiums are your most important ones. Those need to be, because that seems to be about the average.
I mean, for the people who are giving $50 or $75, having a good, attractive
really
premium
good
for them.
Premium for $50 and $75. That's the one that.
That was kind of
lot of people.
my follow-up question to that specifically was, out of all the incentives that you had, regardless of dollar amount, what were the, or regardless of how large it went, what were the most successful dollar amounts that people donated at, the most popular ones?
Well, I had one where you could get a download of the record for $1 because I get really put off when I look at a campaign and the first reward is $20 and you only get like a CD. I think that's kind of crappy and ungenerous. And I think people like to feel rewarded, and they should, because they're doing something wonderful and generous. I mean, I can say that the uplift of spirit I felt through my whole Indiegogo was life-changing and has not left me, and I'm friends with a lot of the people who contributed.
Did you get a lot of those, the $1 ones?
A few. Most people went up to the next one, which was 10. I also, I bake, I'm a good baker, so I had one where I baked brownies, and everybody got like a handwritten thank you note, because I like to write letters anyway, and I thought it was fun. The shipping of the brownies sort of broke me, but then this is, it's not cheap. This is actually touching on something Earl just said. I had this wonderful idea for a pledge that would cost me nothing, and it was something that could make of myself. It's the Your Own Song pledge. It was $100, which I thought hardly anyone would buy. And I write you a song. You can give me a photograph or a subject matter or yada yada. And, I write stupid songs all the time. 14 people bought them. Wow. Yeah. That is like a year and a half of writer's block is what happened. I would sit down and I'd be like,
these people like changed my life and lifted me up after my dog died. And this last song is shit. Oh my God. So I'm still fulfilling my Indiegogo. So just like make sure, like brownies you can make. You can't necessarily write 14 songs, especially if you're a wicked perfectionist. So.
So you touched on a really interesting point there too, in that you know, the reward levels for things really should be, you need to have things that are very accessible, because every person that gets behind a project and backs it, they feel a connection to it, and they're very inclined to talk about it and help, you know, share the information about it. So you want like having a $1 reward level is really smart, because you get that engagement, you get those people, you know, they become a natural word of mouth promotion machine for you. And you know, pricing these things like you know, a telethon where, you know, it's like, oh, you know, $300 you get this keychain, you know, like that's not really what this is about. You want the maximum number of people engaged, because really, like if you look at any Kickstarter project, the number at the top of the page before it even shows the money is the people, how many people have like gotten into this. And I think that like really it's about building a community as well as raising the money to build the project. And you're building this community of people that care about what you're doing. So like, why not have a point where, you know, like that makes it very, very easy for anybody that's interested to hop on board.
That's so true. I think it's really more than the money. It's about, my Indiegogo was a lost leader towards building people who are going to stay with me, like what I do, follow what I do, be on my email list, come to my shows. Like.
So do you view your crowdfunding campaign as part of your overall marketing for your career or your project? The crowdfunding aspect is raising money, but the raising of the money and all of the ancillary communications that you do around that is also marketing, just general marketing.
With our campaign with Daniele, who is a director, and he's been for many years a concept artist for Terry and for a lot of other big directors, we saw this as a chance to start his career as a director and as a filmmaker. And we could have gone out the traditional route and finding production companies and suiting them up, but we really wanted to figure out give him a fan base and start him off with that. And so that's why we chose crowdfunding. That's why we didn't create a business plan and go after big investors. And it worked so well. And Daniele, now, I mean, he's gotten so many compliments, and all those compliments have kind of lifted up his work and his confidence. So now he can he's not taking the concept artist jobs anymore. He's following his own vision and following his own path. And it's super inspiring for me as a filmmaker to see that happen, and it really worked. I mean, he's been spending his entire time working on this film, and now he has a development deal for a feature.
You do need a community to start with, though. I mean, you have to be realistic about this. If you have less than 100 Facebook followers, you know, you need to have a very modest campaign, and you need to have some people to engage initially in this, who then will hopefully help spread the word and everything. And that was one of the things about Pledge Music that was good, was that as we sent out these updates, there were updates that went just to the people who'd pledged, and then there were other updates you could post that they could then share with others. And but you have to be realistic about it, and a lot of these platforms will help you assess what a realistic goal will be based on how many people follow you on Facebook and Twitter.
I think Pledge Music will look at how many people are on your email list. And if you don't have a sufficient number of email addresses to mail the campaign to, they'll say, sorry, your goal is unreachable, or something like that.
I can see both sides of it. Like if I had to show that for Brass Punk, I never would have gotten it done. I don't have an email list, you know. I mean, my email list now are my Kickstarter backers. You know, if I have like something coming up, I can like put a blast out to them. But you know, I think really it's about having a huge fan base can definitely help, because you tap them immediately. But even if you don't have them, if you're doing something compelling, if there's a really, you know, if there's an interesting story about what you're doing, if it's unique enough, you know, another route to go is try and get some buzz and press and blogs and whatever. And the interesting thing about that is if you can get a couple of people to pick up the story, like the blogosphere is really interesting, because like somebody will write about something and then before you know it, like all of these other people have like picked the story up from that, and you can kind of watch it go through these levels of like higher and higher followed blogs. And you know, like with Brass Punk, it was crazy to like kind of see stuff, you know, kind of in like these smaller music blogs, and then like eventually like end up in like Laughing Squid and Boing Boing, just because like you know, if it's a compelling thing, then it can kind of make its way into the spotlight. So you don't necessarily need a huge Facebook following or whatever. If you're doing so, you've got something that's really interesting that people will latch onto.
The other thing is, excuse me, I mean, I see a lot of artists I recognize in the crowd, so I'm assuming there are a lot more that I don't know. It's hard, I think, for artists to place a value on ourselves, and I had a meltdown, like a real honest meltdown when I was trying to put a price on my Indiegogo, and initially I was like, well, maybe I'll ask for $3,000, and a good friend of mine literally like took me by the shoulders and was like, how much do you want? How much do you need to make your record? And I was like, $7,500, and he was like, who the fuck are you not to ask for that? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, I'm so angry at you right now that you're not asking for what you actually want and what you think you're worth. So like I was so scared the day I launched my Indiegogo, and within 24 hours, I can't remember how much we'd raised, but like a lot. And so yeah, be reasonable, but also, especially if you're an artist, be daring, and because it's really hard, and it's good to do.
So, yesterday we had a panel with the management team for Sturgill Simpson, and I'm sorry, were you trying to say something?
I was going to ask you.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, sure. Tied in with what you were talking about just now, could you talk a little bit about what the different platforms offer from the mechanics of managing a campaign? Because one thing, you know, I've got a bunch of through different social media platforms, have a bunch of different followers, but if I did Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and some others, I'm like 30,000 people that I have connected to, but for me to engage all of them, that would be a nightmare. So what do you do from targeting, and also what do the different crowdfunding platforms, how do they integrate with the different social media platforms so that you can manage the campaign effectively over that 30-day period?
Why would it be a nightmare to engage with all your people?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking that to try and engage and have conversation or have updates or things, if it's one-way direction, that's fine. But if there's a dialogue, or maybe how much of it is a dialogue? How much of it is
a huge dialogue. If you just want to talk to them and have them not talk back, you really shouldn't be doing crowdfunding. I mean, I cannot tell you how much time I spent saying thank you, and then also I need you guys. And every single time I did that, I mean, not every single time, but I'm going to say 90% of the time, people I'd see on their Facebook page, boom, I just contributed to Alexandra Scott. I love this campaign, and also she just wrote me, and I like her. So, like, talk to your people, listen to them. Like,
there are also, I mean, so when we found that, because our campaign, we knew that we were going after these like big, we had these big guys involved. The biggest surprise is that the tweets that Terry Gilliam did, the tweets that even we had Stan Lee did, didn't really amount to that much. What really came was when we had those conversations, like you were saying. But that said, we did have a really rigid plan of marketing that I think really worked, and I would preach the gospel of this, of having a weekly press release, which was our formal things, talking points that we needed to say, that we wanted to say, because we were being asked by different blogs and things for this. And even the smallest campaign can do this. Is just have kind of what they want, what the message is for that week. And that's sent to a newsletter. And then we had, from that, then we had the tweets that we wanted to use, the Facebook pieces that we wanted to use. And that was just like our basic mission, our basic talkable points that week. And the rest of it, and the majority, that was a very simple thing we did. And the majority of the work then came in responding and creating dialogue around that. Not even creating dialogue, just responding to dialogue. We had tons and tons of messages through Kickstarter, and that alone took, you know, that I was working 9 hours a day, 7 days a week on this, and a good part of my time was responding.
Yeah, running a campaign is a lot of work. It's not like you just set it and let it go. It's like it's something you're going to manage. It's going to be a full-time job while it's running.
So can you describe the initial steps in the process of setting up the campaign, and what are the milestones of legwork. We've all heard that doing a crowdfunding campaign is a lot of work. So what are some of the steps that you need to take? I mean, start making a video certainly is one.
We really got to come up with the budget and what you want to raise. But then the video is probably the most important piece. That's where you're first going to connect.
So deciding
with
the
people.
amount that you want to set for your goal.
That's-
Well, I imagine
that's
just
really
deciding
important.
which platform is.
Well, that as well, yeah. And they're all a little bit different. There are 191 of them now, or something like that, in the United States alone.
Crowdfunding platforms.
Crowdfunding platforms, yeah. And then there's the you can do it yourself.
Okay, so deciding which platform, deciding the budget and the amount, making a compelling video that tells your story. What are the
rewards?
creating the rewards? Okay.
Having people you trust read your everything before you put it up, so they can be like, I don't really think anybody's going to pay $3,000 to fly you to Hawaii, but that's a nice idea. You know. Although one advantage I will say of Kickstarter over Indiegogo, unless they've changed it, which they probably have because it's a website, Kickstarter, I think you can offer almost unlimited rewards. Indiegogo, there was a finite amount, and I found that annoying.
Finite number of rewards levels?
Yeah, there were. So I had to prune some of my more interesting ones.
So what are some of the other steps? Do you have to do like daily Facebook posts that I'm doing this every single day, don't forget me?
Prior to launch, and this is something people ask me for advice on crowdfunding from time to time, and one thing I really stress is before you launch it, even from this point that you're even thinking that you might want to do a crowdfunding campaign, start making a list of all the people that you possibly know that can help get eyes on your project once it's live. It could be, writers for traditional press, bloggers, friends that you know that just have a large social media reach that you could send a message to and say, hey, I have this going right now. Would you mind putting it out to your network? And start compiling that list. And over time, if you have it going and one day you're in the grocery store and you think of someone else, it's like, oh yeah, I'll put them on the list and have it going. Because once the project goes live, if you don't have this kind of plan of action of how am I going to drive people to this, it can be a really sinking, harrowing feeling. It's like, okay, it's live, now what do I do? But if you start kind of brainstorming and having that list to go down, and just over time as the project's going, reach out to these different points and you're constantly trying to drive traffic to it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No. I also love Blake's idea of sending out a weekly update or press release, or possibly both. And if you don't know how to write a proper press release, and I say this because I write a lot of them and I write them for friends, Ariel Hyatt has a guide on her website for how to write a good press release. Everyone should read it. Because if you send out a press release and it's too cutesy, or you forget to mention your project, that's a problem. Make sure take care of your business, And
they want it to be pretty factual as well, not flowery praise of the project and everything. They want it to be a press release in order to be taken seriously. Can't be.
What about things not to do? What mistakes have you made with your crowdfunding campaigns? All right,
I think I wish I had prepared a lot better beforehand. I felt like in the first week I learned a lot of the stuff that I should have learned in the 6 months previous.
What kind of preparations?
Well, I knew who I was going to contact. I knew who I was going to reach out to. I had talked to a bunch of people, but I didn't have a list of blogs that I was going to send to, and I think I could have done better at reaching the blogosphere. I have a hard time saying that word.
My big lesson was to be explicit, especially with budget. Most of the questions that we're fielding were on budget, and we honestly didn't know the exact how the line item of our film, because it was so complex, and we needed to pay a line producer to get it done. But I think that would have been a worthy investment before we started, is having a very explicit budget and having everything that you can think of, because you will be asked
and put
about
that
it.
on the
Put it right there, front row and center.
Publish your budget.
Publish it.
So
Yeah.
just transparency, so people know exactly what you need the money for.
Yep.
Well, I think our one mistake, which seems to be fairly common, was it was the cost of goods sold, the expense of the shipping and all those other things that
To fulfill the premiums.
that we really hadn't completely detailed out. Like how much it costs to buy tube to mail a poster and those kind of things. I mean, we were fortunate in this one that we didn't have a lot of international people that we had to send to, but I did one recently. It was just a pre-sale campaign, really, for Melanie. We did a live double CD, and we got a huge number of respondents from overseas. She's very popular in Europe. So we had to send out like 100 plus CDs to Europe, to Germany, to UK, and not only was it $6.16 for each one, but every single one, you have to do every one individually and fill out the customs form and everything. So it was time and money that we hadn't really thought out.
Interesting. Question.
Yes, I have like a double question. It's like the crowdfunding initially is for like first timers or grassroots individuals, and the second question is, if you establish the funding and you're successful, do you graduate from like Kickstarter or something, and how do you build? You get your fan base, you build, or how?
I'm gonna say, I mean, no, it's not just for beginners. It's for like really established people are using crowdfunding. It's a legitimate and awesome means of.
But you can't do it too often either.
No, you can't do it
will
every
get.
year.
I mean, it's hard to even think about doing it. We'd have to do it a different way, I think, the next time, just because.
Well, I think your first question was, if you're just beginner, you may not have very much of a fan base or many followers, so is it worth it trying to do a crowdfunding campaign if there aren't that many people paying attention to you?
Well, as Earl had said earlier, if you have a compelling story, a compelling project, then you can get the press for it. That can make up for not having a big fan base.
Even more than the press, if you can get, sorry to interrupt you, Scott, but if you can get those people, your LinkedIn or your Facebook, your Twitter followers, all those people, and I don't like to use the word followers, but I mean it is, because it should be more engaged than that. Like the ones that I follow, the ones that I think are successful campaigns are the ones where I don't feel like somebody's just blasting me with an email and wanting something from me, but where they're actually kind of thrilled that somebody wants to jump on board and be like, I love what you do, and I actually am going to listen to what you say. You're not going to like all of it. People write annoying emails all the time, and they're like, oh, you look too thin, or your hair's weird, and whatever. You know, that's the business. Your hair's weird.
But you were also saying earlier that, I mean, as opposed to trying to put a call out for funding on your own web page, where you may get very limited traffic because very few people know who you are, if you use a platform like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo that has lots of hits that they're getting from people that are just out there searching for things to fund, so you might benefit from some of that spillover as well.
Or if, say for instance, like the guy that makes media, if you want to keep your art social and you don't want to go mainstream, or you don't want a lot of corporate involvement, do you stay with crowdfunding and such engines on the internet like that?
I think that crowdfunding is a great kind of Kickstarter. I mean, it kickstarts you. The projects, I've done several crowdfunding projects, and like the follow-up projects when we're looking for money, none of them have been crowdfunded, because you get established and you know the work that it's going to take, and also the people that you think that you're going to pull in backing from, you feel like you've already hit them up. So you don't want to hit them up with something else. You might want to hit them up with a product. So I would say you have to be it's a very delicate equation to make. Some projects, like there was in Kickstarter, there's the watch, what is it called, the Pebble watch or something, that they followed up their first very successful Kickstarter with a second Kickstarter for the next version of the watch that was it was like the most successful Kickstarter ever made. But that was built into their business model because that's how they marketed it, that's how they pre-sold it. So I think unless it's like really part of your larger strategy and your larger mission, then you just have to do some soul searching to see if it makes sense.
Yeah, brief comment about that. I wasn't looking to get into crowdfunding originally, but I've worked in the technology space, and a lot of what would be considered angel investors or seed investors, even venture capital investors, want to see crowdfunding first because it proves it as a market, and it's marketing, it's developing a community. So it's the whole new way of how to market. It's social marketing, and it's not the way it was even 5 or 10 years ago. So now if you go with a business plan or something like that to investors, they're going to want to know, where did you put this up? You know, what platform have you been on? And you go, what do you mean, what platform? Well, right away you're looking at being naive because everybody's going to Kickstarter or something like that first, and it proves the audience before they'll then say that you're going to have traction in the marketplace.
That's actually exactly the reason Kickstarter was designed. It was that. So my friend Perry Chen, he started the company, and there was a situation he wanted to create this event, but there was no way to know if there was actually enough demand for this particular event he wanted to do at that time that he wouldn't just lose all the money that he would put into it. He's like, why isn't there a way to just test this before I commit to it? And so that was the origins of what eventually became Kickstarter. It was a market test basically, and it's really awesome to kind of see that it's come around to this point because it's the safest thing. Like you know that there's a market there before you go to production on whatever it is, and it really, that was a long-standing problem in business. Is that risk? There were a lot of unknowns, and yeah.
That said, if your Kickstarter doesn't work out, don't give up on it immediately. I've been with a lot of projects who have had failed crowdfunding campaigns, and some of them have stopped work on their project. Others have found new ways to tool their project, and it was just the thing to push their project forward. And so either way, I think the progress and momentum is something that you want to get this project finished. You want to get this project done. You're going to try through Kickstarter, but if Kickstarter isn't going to work, you're going to have that narrative that you've created to build your Kickstarter, to build you to the next level, and to take it to a new place.
And that's really the attitude you have to have if you're going to make a life in the arts anyway, is I'll try this, I'm going to try my hardest. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to feel great for 24 to 72 hours, and then I'm going to think of the next thing. I have noticed that everybody's been asking about budget, and I think that's the place where I messed up the most. And I think it's, maybe there's a great tool out there that's like how to create a budget if you're kind of an idiot. If there is, somebody should tell me about it, but I think that might be the hardest thing.
I think just figure out everything that you think it's going to cost, and then add 33%.
Yeah, that's probably good.
And don't forget about it's not just the budget of making the record, it's all these other expenses. That's one thing that, if you come away with nothing else from that, just remember that all of that costs money after you're done.
Well, that was what Stanton was talking about last week. He was saying that he raised, I don't know, $20,000 or something.
Yeah.
He maybe spent half of that making the record, and then the rest of the money he used producing the record, shipping the records, fulfilling the premiums, and so on. So the budget is realistic as far as the fundraising goal, but the entire budget isn't just the production of the project, it's all of the other things that you have to do on top of it. So I was going to say earlier that yesterday we had a panel on the career of Sturgill Simpson, and his manager talked about how Sturgill's first 2 records were self-released and self-financed. And I asked, did you crowdfund? And he said, absolutely not. Crowdfunding would be tantamount to selling out. It would be making yourself beholden to the whims of the public, and it wouldn't allow the artist to exercise complete creative autonomy. How do you feel about that statement?
I completely disagree with that statement. I mean, unless you have a package that says for X amount of money, you, the backer, get to dictate something about the record, I think. I'm sorry, I know Sturgill Simpson's probably doing better in his career than I am, but I think there's a misunderstanding of what crowdfunding is. But I see this all the time in discussions that people have this distaste for it. They feel like it's begging and like it's a little ignominious, and just, if you can't get over that, crowdfunding's definitely not for you, but I think that's silly.
And I'm a filmmaker, and filmmaking is my passion. And I probably will never create a crowdfunding campaign for my films because they're highly experimental and they're very personal to me. And I know what it takes to do a crowdfunding campaign. And for me, I can create a film. The biggest thing is I can create a film without backing. I can create a film. I don't need that push, and in fact, I thrive on that. So it's very personal for me. But there's a lot of filmmakers out there who don't have the same kind of relationship with their art as I do, or mine is extremely personal, and I don't even want to show it to most people. And for those, crowdfunding is the right thing. And Daniele, who was the filmmaker, was very kind of hesitant to jump in the spotlight all of a sudden for being behind the scenes for so long. But he realized that his film really needed other people to be made. He had this film already written, he had it concepted for about 15 years, and there was no way he could make it alone. And he was at a point in his career where he said that it's now or never, I'm gonna do it. So maybe I'll enter into that point, and I would totally jump on crowdfunding, but for my particular art, and this is something that I like deeply had lots of time to soul search about, I'm not comfortable with putting my art in the crowdfunding sphere. It is a sphere. You do have, there's marketing, there's all that kind of stuff. So you can't forget about that.
I still think you're probably less supervised making a self-financed crowdfunded record than you are working for the Weinsteins or any major or not so major label if you're a musician. But again, that's just my opinion. Earl?
Yeah, I think that that the premise that you laid out is definitely a misconception of what crowdfunding is about. And in fact, I had a failed Kickstarter project last year where I tried to actually do exactly that. I wanted it to be this interactive process where the backers got to make decisions that drove the shape of the music that was being created. And I don't know, I failed to explain what it was well, which is possible, or people just weren't into it. I don't know, but I definitely in my other projects have not felt like the backers were dictating anything more than what I had already promised.
Yeah, definitely not. We didn't get any feedback from the pledgers as far as what they expected from the record or anything. But I think Sturgill's manager also said that his opinion is that the artists needed to be invested personally in the release as well, like financially, that somehow it's more significant if the artist is actually putting their own money into it. That's the impression I got from him.
And you do, I mean, when the crowdfunding campaigns, there are expectations that are created by the backers. And so, for instance, we missed a goal the time that we were going to send a reward out, and it was a simple little reward, digital desktop art. We had so many people email us about this little digital desktop art, and we were in the middle of pre-production. And like, we didn't really have any bandwidth to do the digital desktop art, so we had to satisfy the backers, and these people are vocal. They'll get up and go onto your Kickstarter page and write nasty comments if they think. And so we had to take the concept artist from doing the work for the film to creating digital desktop art that took like 2 or 3 days to do. So that, I mean, there is a certain amount of give or take and expectation that's outside of your own kind of necessity while you're doing the production on the piece.
Earl, you've done multiple crowdfunding campaigns. I'm not sure about the rest, but my question is, would you do it again?
I'm planning on it. Yeah, I've got one I'm lining up for later this year.
I would absolutely do it again, although I still think it's too close to my last one. I would wait a little while or do it differently.
Yeah, timing, you just have to wait. I hesitate to go back to the fans too often, I guess.
There are exceptions to this, but I think in general that's very, you don't want to milk it too much or just like constantly be hitting people up for money. But so I did this the brass punk project where we had done these Daft Punk tunes with a brass band, and then the new Daft Punk record was coming out, and they leaked the track "Get Lucky." It was like, man, we should do this. So like very, very quickly, I put up a Kickstarter project. I think I just ran the campaign for like a week just to get the money to get the musicians back in the studio to do that tune on top of the other one. And we hadn't put out the record from the first project yet, but that thing got backed almost instantly. And but it was a special case. There was like all this momentum around that tune, and that Daft Punk had this kind of buzz going. And so the people that were tied into brass punk already were, I think they were interested in seeing a brass punk version of this new Daft Punk tune that technically wasn't even out yet.
Did you know Daft Punk was about to come out with a record when you got into that? Because that timing was
They had been
great.
threatening to put out a record
Yeah.
for a couple of years, but not releasing any details on it. And the way it timed out, because they really didn't say when it was going to come out, and like I already had my stuff in the pipeline, and
Yeah.
I mean the timing couldn't have been better.
It was amazing.
But it was really
Yeah.
accidental.
Yeah.
I think also what you're describing about just having an idea, reaching to the people, being able to fulfill it so quickly, that is what makes crowdfunding so great. They can always say no. All you're doing is asking, but if you've already created a relationship and you've handled yourself in such a way that even if you're really late writing 10 individual songs for people, you're still like connecting with them and writing them and checking in, and then they're going to be more inclined to respond to you. And if you don't ask, you never find out.
Would you consider doing a crowdfunding campaign on a different platform than the one you used last time?
I think I almost certainly would.
Why?
I just really like Kickstarter. I think I like its interface better than any of the others, quite honestly. I think there's sort of a prestige factor, honestly, when you say I have a Kickstarter as opposed to when I have any other kind, just because it's the first.
It's become the Google.
Yeah, and I have personal issues with GoFundMe because of the projects they won't fund, which gets into like women's rights stuff that maybe we don't want to talk about in this panel. And I don't know what exactly happened with this, but as of a couple weeks ago, Indiegogo was the only platform that hadn't shut down the attempts at fundraising for Michael Traeger, who the cop who most recently, or maybe not most recently, but shot, I'm blanking on his name, in the back in South Carolina. And I probably won't use Indiegogo again because I was disappointed in that.
I think I might do it ourselves without a platform. I mean, I'd had a lot of success back before any of these platforms were around. I was managing different female singer-songwriters from the New York area back at the turn of the century, and we did very successful campaigns along the same lines. Everything from a house concert to a copy of the record, or a night out with dinner. We were doing all this stuff, and we raised.
So why would you not use a platform? Why would you do it on your own web page rather than going through a platform?
There were a couple reasons. One, we really didn't seem to get anything. We had almost no penetration for people who weren't already fans, and we did so why give up that, in their case, 15% with Pledge Music? Then when I can do it myself, I can create something that's going to look just as great and not have that additional expense in the budget. So.
And I did crowdfunding campaigns before doing anything on Kickstarter, and successfully raised a lot of money through just a donation button and some neat rewards on a website. And that donation button, I think it's like 1.9 to 2.9%. I think that the next project that I'm working on right now, another film project, we aren't using any crowdfunding platform at all, particularly because we just want the freedom to create really cool web experiences. And this project has a lot of internet pieces that you can't do. You can't write custom HTML inside Kickstarter and these kind of things. And you also don't have the tracking tools that you would have with your own website. So there's a lot of different like analytics and things that you can look at through a website that you just can't get through Kickstarter. There are tools that kind of help you. And the other thing is, if you have those big followers and you've done donation campaigns before with these followers, I kind of know what to expect. So we're going to do it that way and not give away the extra 4 to 6% to the crowdfunding platform.
So yeah, I think well, my next project I've already got slated to go on Kickstarter, but there's an interesting new sort of crowdfunding platform, or micro patronage might be a more accurate term, called Patreon, where people essentially subscribe to an artist, and it can either be like a monthly thing or a per project thing, but it's an interesting model. I've been trying to figure out how to make it work for me. I think if I were more prolific, I would be all over it. But
So does that provide support for just basic ongoing life costs as opposed to specific project-related costs?
Depends how much you make. Do you want to answer?
I don't even know how to process that question, man. What's the difference?
Well, I mean, because
I
on
know a little bit
Kickstarter
about
you
it
can
'cause I'm
only
like-
fund something that is a project with a beginning and an end. And then there's this other idea that you could actually raise money just to live on.
Well, yeah, go ahead. It seems like Patreon is like it's about the artist creating things, you know, and like it's either per project where, like, say you're making videos, so like each video you put out, there like your backers contribute, you know, whatever it is, $2 or $5 a piece, or whatever it is that they sign up for, so that you know, like, your budget for this next one that you can put out is, you know, however many thousands of dollars that totals to, or it can be on a monthly basis. And I guess, like, you know, if you're not producing content that your backers are interested in, you're not gonna stay monthly subscribers very long. So at that point, I don't know if it's more ongoing than Kickstarter, but I don't know, like, if anybody's gonna get mad at you if you, like, go have a nice dinner with some of the money. You know?
Well, I don't know that you could prove it, but it's a way essentially of supporting life. And I believe Kim Bookbinder has been doing a version of this long before Patreon existed, and built into her costs was an understanding with her backers that occasionally she was going to take time to, like, turn off her phones, go decompress, and live her life. Like, that she was not going to be constantly producing because she's a machine, and not a machine. Kim Bookbinder is not a Terminator. But Patreon ultimately could be a way of supporting one's life as well as one's life as an artist, although I think that might be slightly misusing the costs.
I think Bandcamp just started a subscription thing that you can do as well, where people pay $5 or whatever you want to set a month, and you provide them with exclusive content that they can't get anywhere else, whether it's a recording or a chat, Skype chat or something like that. Yeah.
Two questions real quick. You mentioned about the tools and integration. Are you using external tools like Hootsuite or something to manage your social media, or are you managing that from something in the platform? And also, are there platforms that are more mobile friendly?
I think they're all pretty mobile friendly, and all of them have some sort of connection with, if you link your Twitter and Facebook accounts and everything, you just post there, and then, you know, it's sent out. So it's not like you have to go to each place and post. And but I do use Hootsuite myself just to keep track of things.
Yeah, and I think the biggest tool that I use is Google Analytics, and setting different segments and setting different goals on Google Analytics, tracking click rates. I mean, you can get really, really complicated. You shouldn't get really, really complicated unless you have huge, you know, decisions to be made about hundreds of thousands of people. But little things like having 2 versions of a video or 2 versions of a web page, and seeing how many people press the play button, and then going with that. That's a big tool. I mean, Campaign Monitor to send emails. You can send out different split tests, A/B tests. We did a lot of that, and you send it out to, like, the first 10% of your newsletter base, and whoever opens it based on a subject line or content, that's the one that goes out to the rest of the 90%. And little things like that really helps, because that creates what what is called conversions, when you get people to click on a link. So it can be anything from colors to your language. Mostly it's the call to action, that language that you're getting people to click the button for. And you as a single person don't really know what's going to be the best until you send it out and get it in front of people.
All right, bottom line, do's and don'ts. What should you do, what should you not do in a crowdfunding campaign?
Definitely do have a budget. do be explicit and do have the bandwidth to answer any questions. The flip side of that is don't go in it without knowing your budget and picking a random number. Don't be shy, because you have to really be explicit, and don't give up, because at the last moment you will have somebody who saves your butt if you're really, really, really working hard and showing that you're working hard.
And I mean, this might not be what everybody else in the panel thinks, but do appreciate the person who gives you the $1 just as much as the person who gives $1,500, because that might be all they have to give. That's a meaningful gift. That's all super valuable. And honestly, you can tell the difference between somebody who's just kind of phoning it in and going, yeah, thanks, here's the super automated email you just got, blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, huh, well, I'm not so psyched I donated to that. And the person who's like, so pumped, you're on board. Like, that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to see.
Fulfill all your pledges in a timely manner. That's important.
Unless they're songs, Kim.
Unless they're songs, yes.
Some of us are trying.
That's the footnote.
Yeah.
I'd say do engage and do focus on building a community. These people, the people that back a project, are really your new best friends. And if you treat them well, they're gonna follow you through not just that project, but lots of projects for years to come. And don't. I see this often, and we hadn't actually gotten to it today, so I'm gonna throw this in there. When you have a campaign going, the thing not to do is to just blast your social media every day with, hey, give me money at my campaign here. A really good way around that, really effective way around that is to create relevant updates to with some kind of content. It could be a photo of you writing a song, or maybe some lyrics that you wrote for a thing, or like something that relates to the project, and put it up, and then your post that you can put into your social media that links back to your crowdfunding campaigns, like, hey, there's a new update here, check out these, got the first verse of whatever song up. And so then it's not just like, hey, give me money. It's like, hey, look, this is something I'm working on, come check it out. And then it gets them to the place without it being such a, without it being so direct that, it's like, hey, I'm just trying to get money out of everybody. It's more like, hey, check this thing out I'm doing, and if you want to support it, you can.
I would sometimes share stories, because I had such wonderful interactions with my backers. So sometimes I'd just be like, hey, this just happened. I got this unbelievable, sweet email from such and such people, and they're donating, and they're coming to my show, and I'm so excited to meet them. And that kind of stuff got click-throughs like you can't even imagine. The other thing is, make your rewards as interesting as you possibly can. Like, think about what it is you do that's special. Do you bake brownies? Do you make homemade scarves? Can you draw somebody a picture? I mean, because I don't really want any more CDs, and I don't want a sticker, and I have tons of t-shirts. That kind of stuff, put it in there, but that's a little boring. Put some stuff in there that's exciting and super individual, because I guarantee you there's somebody out there who really, really wants a hand-drawn picture that you signed and drew a heart on.
Our fastest reward that went was when we drew a picture. It was like within 5 minutes. We drew a picture, we photographed and videotaped the guy drawing the picture, and then we put it on Facebook. And we put it at a very nominal fee. That's why it went so fast. But we also wanted some unique person to grab it, and that worked so quickly. Within like 5 minutes of posting, drawing the picture and putting it up, it was gone. That was definitely the fastest.
So people want something that is very personally touched by you, and so that helps them feel like they're having a personal interaction with you.
Yeah.
Lyrics, a score, or the music signed, things like that. Yeah.
Kristen Diablo just put together for her campaign, which I think was Pledge Music, a really nice book of handwritten lyrics. Sarah Quintana is doing Singing Telegrams for hers right now. I mean, the people who donate to this stuff are, as far as I can see, cool people with interesting taste, and they want something special. They might be glad to have a t-shirt on top of it, and make it a good t-shirt, like, by all means.
But something that's unique and hand-touched, and
they
that
were
they
way
can
more
feel your
excited
presence.
about the brownies. The brownies were like the thing.
What's in those brownies?
Chocolate and butter.
Well, and there you have it.
Yeah.
That's what makes them so special.
I offered
and love.
to bake you
and
some
love.
one time, and you said you were gluten-free.
Yeah, well, you know.
I'll make you some.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. And they're made with love. We know that.
Oh, no. I hate everyone.
Any other questions before we go? Yeah, all right. Well, please use the microphone.
Hello, I'm Steve.
Hello, Steve.
One question, and it might be self-explanatory, but when creating a budget, and even if publishing it, obviously you have to, if you hire musicians, you need to pay them a salary, you need to pay for studio time, all that stuff. Do you include paying yourself a salary, rent, food, all that in your budget?
Yes.
And like living expenses, I would
forgot
say.
that.
I think it's smart to do. I think that like if with any project that you're going to take on, if it's something, of non-trivial and substantial, if you really want to do it your best, you need to be able to focus on doing that. That should be your job at the time. I think it's completely reasonable to put that into your budget so that you can focus on making whatever this thing is that people are getting behind you to support as good as it can possibly be.
And along with the explicit line item budget, I mean, there's reason behind it, and you really have to show that each piece has, the reason you're putting on your budget is to show how thought out your project is. And in addition to that, you're showing that each piece has a reason to exist, to be paid for. It helps you as a creator to figure out kind of your final budget, and it all helps your audience understand what you're doing. So, I think another exercise is once you have that budget, to really figure out how you can explain each piece of your budget and do that in a succinct way. You don't have to really lay it out in a crazy, contractual way, but just kind of to tell people, hey, I'm taking off work for this month. I'm not going to work at all. I'm just going to focus on this. I would normally, I have rent expenses. That's how I first kind of got my salary for the project. I said, hey, I have rent expenses. I'm going to give myself to this. Can you at least pay for rent? And they said, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So that's kind of how the conversation started.
So just be honest.
Be honest.
Okay. Do we have another question? Any others?
Just wanted to say, I was going to mention one thing. Just I've been coming since the first year of Sync Up. I thought you were going to wrap up, but thank you for having this. It's phenomenal, and after coming for 8 years, it's such a great resource.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it. So I was going to ask about the updates on social media and I really like the idea of having more unique updates rather than just please give me money, I'm having this campaign. But what's the fine line of how often to do that? Because I know people that work for event companies that invite me to an event every day and that just make me want to just turn off the notifications. Would you say like 1 week, every week, or does it really depend?
I think you have to feel out your Facebook and people and Twitter and whatever other social media you're on. Initially, I did it every day. In the middle 2 weeks, I let it lag a little bit, and then the final week, it was every day.
I mean, you run into the problem with Facebook in particular that maybe 10% of the people are seeing it. So you do need to post at different times and things like that to hopefully get more eyeballs on it. But I think you really have to do it, as was mentioned here, more subtly and not just say, my pledge drive is going on. Post a video or post a song or post something and then, oh, by the way, sort of thing. But give them something for your begging.
I think
Yeah, give them. That's a good point. Sorry, or like give them something before they even donate. Yeah,
I think assuming that you are posting content that that's interesting, that you hope that people will find interesting. I don't know if there's a hard number I can give you for like do it this often or not, but I think a good litmus test would be how much engagement you're getting on it. Both on like if you're posting these on Facebook, both like how many people are commenting on your Facebook page, how many people are you seeing an increase in traffic through the crowdfunding site, and if you get to a frequency where that's kind of dropping off, then maybe it's a little too much.
And each social media source has its own kind of regularity. So for instance, Twitter, we would post crazily on Twitter, tons on Twitter, because we were getting retweets and like it was turned into like a fun game to do. Whereas on Facebook, we were before every post, we had 2 people look at it and decide if the post was necessary. And if the post wasn't necessary, we stopped. We didn't post it. And we did a lot of testing before we did our campaign, with just from posting the craziest memes to posting, things that really mattered to us. And of course, at the end, we realized the things that really mattered to us were the things that needed to be seen. So that's how we then, when we started the campaign, we started to just post the things that needed to be seen, that had to be there, except on Twitter. Twitter was just a fun free-for-all, and it worked in the end. Like, we had Stan Lee retweet our stuff and different things like that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, have we covered it?
Oh, educate yourself about the time, and this is easy. You can look it up. The times of day when your stuff is going to get buried on Facebook, and what days of the week, yada yada yada. You guys all know what I'm saying.
And if you are considering a Kickstarter, a really great place to get started is Kickstarter's Creator Handbook. If you look up Kickstarter's Creator Handbook, just go through that. That's literally how we kind of based our entire campaign, was off of what they taught us, and it works. It's great.
Also, Ariel Hyatt, who runs Cyber PR, has fantastic free online tools for not just how to write a press release, but how to prepare for a crowdfunding campaign. It's worth checking out. I'm sure it's not the only one, but it's the one I know.
All right. Well, please thank our incredibly learned and experienced panel, Alexandra Scott, Earl Ciano, Blake Berticelli, and Kimber Packard. So that concludes the 2015 Sync Up Conference, the 8th annual. We'll see you back here next year. Thank you all so much.
Thanks.